are going to go in your Google folder, and then what we're going to do at the end of class will also go in your Google folder for today. Okay, so 2 things going in your folder, all right? So we are going to talk about, of course, my pen is dead. You're kidding. Oh, no. Okay, why not change it? There we go. Okay, we're talking about economic systems today. So these are different types of like economies, which is sometimes can be kind of confusing for us because we don't really know a lot about economic things, but it's okay. We're going to learn like the basics today. We're going to look at some advantages and disadvantages of different systems that countries go by, okay? If you have a headphone in, I see several of you right now. Take them out because I want you to listen to me. Take them all out. There's a bunch of you. Take them out. Thank you. All right. So when we're talking about economic systems, there are 3 questions that countries have to answer about how they're going to get things like produced into their people, okay? So we're looking at what they're going to produce, who they're going to produce it for, and how they're going to produce it. Okay, so those are the 3 questions that really kind of drive these different systems that we're going to look at today, okay? The what, the who, and the how, all right? That's what has to be determined. There are 4 different types of systems that we're going to look at today: traditional, command, capitalism, and mixed, okay? The first one we're going to talk about is traditional economic systems. With traditional economic systems, this is really just like customs or traditions that are going to influence how the economy is run, okay? So it's based off of rituals or customs, okay? Really, there's not a whole lot of like money being spent or like back and forth. It's really just like trading, okay? Bartering means to trade. So it's not really like money. Think like a long time ago, you know, when people used to trade things to get something, you would give away a bracelet to get, I don't know, some eggs or milk or whatever it is, right? Like that's what bartering is, not using like actual currency, like dollars or coins, okay? Bartering is just like trading. And so in traditional societies, that's what they do, okay? And there are some examples there of where this happens. You need to know, though, that this does not happen in any full country today. So no full country is fully a traditional economic system. So why don't we write that down, because that's important to know. No country today. It's just going to be parts, okay? So like rural parts of Africa, rural parts of India, maybe like different tribal places, just like small groups of people, but not full countries are in traditional systems today, okay? Does that make sense? All right. So Aborigines and the Inuits are examples of this. You can see these weird little pictures. Clearly, they don't look very like urbanized, right? They look like they're very rural, away from the urbanized core. Remember how we talked about the other day, the percent urban of a country is really important? You remember talking about that from our stat sheet? Okay, these groups of people who are in traditional economic systems are not going to be included in that percent urban, okay? They're in very rural areas. They're kind of isolated, okay? And we can see that through our advantages and disadvantages, okay? So the advantages of this is that it's going to be pretty continuous here, okay? Very, nothing really is going to change. It's going to be hard to break out of. But the disadvantages here are pretty lengthy, okay? These people are not really going to adapt to changes or new ideas. They're going to be pretty behind in the time, like those pictures we just saw on that last slide, right, of the Aborigines and the Inuits. They don't look like they have just all of the technology in the world available to them, right? They probably are not living in the best like houses, right? If the Inuits are living like in igloos, right? And the Aborigines living in the huts, right? Like that, they're pretty much living in a lower standard, like those LDC countries. Remember talking about less developed countries the other day? That's where traditional economic systems are going to take place. Okay, so LDCs here. When we look at our big questions of the what, the who, and the how, this is really just going to be decided by their traditions and their rituals. So what has happened in the past is pretty much how it's going to determine their economic system. So what's going to be produced, what depends on what that cultural group needs. How is it going to be produced? Again, probably traditions and rituals to decide how it's going to be produced. And who is it going to be produced for? Probably just that small group of people that it's affecting, okay? Because remember, this is not on a large scale. This is a very small scale economic system for just that group, okay? Very small. That's it for traditional. The next one is a command economy. Command is going to be all about the government, okay? Command means that the government is controlling pretty much everything. Okay, the government is going to determine the need of the people and the best way to produce it, okay? The government's going to have a lot of control here. So there's little input from the people, okay? The government has decided that that they want equality. They want everything to be equal. So to do that, they say, okay, we'll just decide everything for the people. The people are not ever going to have a chance to say anything that they want to say. They don't get a chance to produce what they want to produce. They don't get to have a voice, okay? So it's very controlling. The government is going to control everything here, okay, because they think that to give everybody equality, they have to control it, okay? This is an example. So in the bottom right-hand corner, I found this picture a while ago. My fiance sent it to me. This is in Venezuela. They are transitioning from like a freer economic system from what they've experienced in the past to more of a communist command economy. And so the picture on the left, you see this guy here? This is the same guy. This picture on the left side was this little store that he had, and that was in like 07, 08, like a little over 10 years ago. And the picture on the right is from more recently, okay? Same guy, same place. What do we notice? Less stuff for sure, right? Look at his store in the first picture. So much stuff, right? Because he was probably deciding how much to buy to sell to customers, right? And so he was deciding that. And then on the right side, the government has said, hey, we're going to tell you what you can have to sell to the people. Okay, so the government has come into control here, and the store itself looks different. What else do you notice?
He's skinnier.
He's skinnier, right, Whitney? Like a lot skinnier. It looks older, for sure. Well, that will happen with time anyways, but he's a lot skinnier, right? Do you think that maybe he has as much freedom as he did in the past to buy whatever type of food he wanted? No? He's probably more restricted on what he can do and what he can eat and what he can buy, maybe. Okay? So that's just one example of how the government can control something and how this is turning to a command economy. Okay? Within command economies, there's two different types here, okay? You have communism and socialism, and they're both different. Okay, so the column on the left-hand side you see is for communism. What do you know about communism?
The people don't have that much freedom.
No, they don't at all, okay? People don't have freedom. Why?
The president gets it all. Or like the government or
Yeah, the government, again, is controlling everything, okay? So this can kind of be a political and an economic system. It says goods and services are distributed based on the need, but that is determined by the government. So you might actually need to go to the doctor. Let's say you're sick or something, right? And you need to go to like a Care Now or a Minute Clinic, right? Just to get some medicine. Well, if the government has decided in your communist society that there's not a big enough need for Care Nows, you might not have a Care Now. And you might have to travel really far to get to a hospital or a doctor. Okay, so the government is deciding what goods and services the people need. It's not the people deciding what they need and doing it. It's the government telling them that. Okay, there's not going to be any private ownership. What does that mean?
You can't have your own company.
Yeah, you can't have your own company. How many of you know someone who has their own company? Oh my gosh, wow, there's a lot of you, okay? So if we were in a communist society, that wouldn't happen, okay? You can't just create your own business or say you have a really good idea. Maybe some of you are going to be entrepreneurs one day and create your own company. But if you were in a communist society, that wouldn't work, okay? Because there's no private ownership in a communist society because the government will control everything. That's what you need to know. The government will do everything. Examples of this are going to be North Korea today is still communist, and Cuba and China are transitioning out of communism, but they're still pretty linked closely to communism, okay? But North Korea for sure is communist. Okay, those are current examples. The other part of a command society with some government control is called socialism, which is our right side of this slide over here. So with socialism, there are programs for poor people. So think like free education. So if you wanted to go to college, everybody could go to college and it would be free. Okay, there is free health care. If you need to go to the doctor, great, let's all go to the same doctor and everybody has the same access to that. And Social Security. So whenever you retire one day, everybody's going to be pulling from the same money. Okay, so socialism is more ideal here, but the catch to this is that taxes are high. Okay, so people are paying a lot in taxes. You might hear your parents complain about having to pay taxes right now. Well, taxes are way higher in socialist countries, okay? For the most part, the government is going to control things like companies, but there can be private ownership. It's just not going to be like this really big, huge franchise like Walmart or something. That's not going to be privately owned. It's going to be a smaller, like if you own something, if you have your own shop, okay, it's going to be smaller. It's not going to grow very big because the government's going to try to limit that and control that. But there will be some private ownership, but not a lot. Okay, so that's kind of the difference. Our best examples here are Sweden, Finland, and Canada. Canada has a really good healthcare system, if you didn't know that. Sweden and Finland. Where is Sweden and Finland? Do you know?
Europe.
What part of Europe? Northern Europe, okay? Those are like leaders in a lot of stuff, like education and paying their people. They have like the highest like income because their companies will pay their people the most. They also have the highest taxes because of this, because they're socialists and they have free healthcare and free education and all of that, okay? So communism and socialism are a part of command economies, even though they look different. Communism, super, super, super controlled by the government. Socialism, not as much. It's a little bit more positive, okay? Some advantages and disadvantages are here. There's not a whole lot of unemployment, which is a good thing, right? You want your people in your country to be able to have a job, and in most command economies, that is going to happen. And for the most part, your basic needs are taken care of, like education and public health and stuff like that, okay? Disadvantages are kind of a lot here. If we're thinking about communism, this is the main kicker here, right? It's a lot of government control, and there's not a whole lot of freedom. And with that, like most of these countries who are especially communist, they don't like thinking. Did I spell that right? Oppressive. They don't like outsider point of views. So like North Korea, do we know a whole lot about North Korea? We really don't. What was that movie that came out a few years ago about North Korea? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, right? Wasn't that what it was called? And there was like a lot of drama around that because people can't get into North Korea. First of all, their borders are very, very strict. Like you can't even just like go vacation there. Like there's no getting in and out of North Korea. It's very tightly locked down. They're very isolated. And there's like, if they have the internet, like there's a lot of governmental controls. Even in China, I have a friend, whenever I studied abroad, who's from Hong Kong. Hong Kong's a little bit different from the rest of China, but China still heavily controls internet usage and what you're able to access or not access. Again, the government control is a big deal, and that's going to be pretty oppressive for people who live there, okay, because the government wants to control everything. Okay, so that's going to limit individuality. You're not going to have a whole lot of freedom there. Okay.
What was it?
The
movie?
What was it called, Ryan?
The Interview.
The Interview. Who was in it? Seth Rogen, right? Yeah. I never saw it.
It's good.
And it was like one of the Franco brothers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, when we look at our big three questions, what is being produced? The government decides it. How is it being produced? Again, the government's going to decide that. The government is going to own the factories, okay? So people aren't really making a profit off of it. It's the government. And who is it being produced for? Most of the time, just for their people. With these two things down here at the bottom that says the government's going to decide it and there's very little trading, that's really for communism. Socialist countries will trade. They have good relationships with other people, like Norway and Sweden and Finland and Canada, right? Like they have good relationships with other countries. But countries like North Korea, like I just said, very blocked off from the rest of the world. They rely on themselves, and they don't trade or really communicate with other countries. Okay, so they're very isolated. Okay, that is all for that. The next one is capitalism. There's different terms for this one. That's why I have all these words up here. Capitalism, or a market economy, is also known as free enterprise. This is all based off of consumption choices by consumers. What does that mean? What are consumers?
People who buy the product.
Yeah, people who buy the products, okay? So whoever buys the product, they're going to decide what's being produced, how much it's produced, and how much things cost, okay? So the buyer here, that's us, okay? So it's the people. The people are going to be the buyers. Very different from the last one that we just talked about, okay? So examples here are really your, more often than not, your more developed countries, okay, your MDCs. The U.S. is the most free enterprise country in the world. Okay, so if we look at all of these examples up here, really, if you can buy things and you determine what you buy when you buy it, that's capitalism, okay? Coca-Cola is an example of what can happen because of capitalism. Walt Disney How many of you know how many things are controlled by Disney? Have you ever seen that infographic before? Like,
Everything.
Disney controls everything. Like, he was so rich. I'm not kidding. All the ESPNs, like almost all of your TV stations, your big time like movie producers, like Disney owns freaking everything, okay? And that happens because of capitalism, okay? That's not going to happen in a communist society or in a command economy because someone would have limited Walt Disney's creativity, right? A long time ago, he wouldn't have been able to make up Mickey Mouse, right? What's going on? Okay, what? Yes, what? Okay, so advantages here. This makes sense because this is what you're used to, okay? There is freedom for everyone, for businesses, for workers, for customers. There's not government interference. The consumer is going to be happy because you're going to get what you want. Think about all the stuff that you get for Christmas or for your birthday or just all the stuff that you have in your house. That's freedom, right? Nobody's telling you what you can or can't buy. Okay, and that's because of free enterprise, okay? There's freedom here, if you need to write that down. Disadvantages of this could be that there's competition. What does like competition mean when we're talking about like businesses?
Another like company could get more money.
Yeah,
Popeyes versus Chick-fil-A.
Nike or Adidas, what'd you say?
I said Popeyes versus Chick-fil-A.
Okay, yeah, but who even would choose Popeyes? Everybody's going to pick Chick-fil-A, right? It could be like,
Pepsi versus Coca-Cola.
yeah, Pepsi versus Coke, right?
That was a big one.
Or like Chick-fil-A versus like Whataburger, right? Or Quick Trip versus like Racetrack, right? What's down on Main Street? Oh, like Walgreens versus CVS, right? So you have all of these businesses that have been formed and created here in the U.S. to make a profit, but people are the ones who decide what's going to be successful and what's not going to be successful, right? What is this store? I haven't been living in Frisco, but just for a few years, but has there been a store or a restaurant or something? Oh, yeah, Tacos for Life. Who knows Tacos for Life? Did you ever go to Tacos for Life right there? Okay. They went out of business. I just noticed in the last month or two. Okay. So Tacos for Life went out of business and now there's a new taco place that's going in there. Ian, I know my life. I know tacos are for my life. Okay. But they're out of business now. So that's because of competition. People in Frisco decided to go to other taco places, for whatever reason. And so Tacos for Life, I guess, came to the conclusion that they weren't making enough money, right? So that's what competition looks like, okay? If a business goes out of business, it's probably because they're not making a profit anymore, okay? And that is because of competition, okay? What?
Roses is the best.
Oh, I do like me some Rosas. Let's be real, I like any kind of taco, so.
Toys R Us went out of business.
Toys R Us did go out of business.
I was so upset because that was my
Like Buy My
childhood.
Baby or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
Were those with the same company?
I think they were similar, right? Like Kmart, you guys probably weren't alive when Kmart was still around, but
Yeah.
Kmart went out of business because of things like Walmart and Target, okay? All those places that kind of overtook what Kmart was. What?
Why did Toys R Us go out of business?
I'm not sure. I'm assuming because of competition, right? There were other toy stores
Target.
that were being more successful or taking their customers, okay? So that's what competition looks like. In countries like where we live, with capitalism, you're going to face unemployment. Have any of your parents ever lost a job before? My parents definitely have, right? And so that's one of the downfalls of capitalism too, okay? What?
Isn't like in New York since Uber came.
That's a great example, right? So Uber is going to take away taxis, right? I don't think I've been in a taxi in a long time because I just Uber, because Uber is easier, right?
California has taxis.
Yeah, so that's all a part of competition. Another downfall here is that there could be not enough like public goods. This says education or health or defense. This is really like private versus public. You know how there are private schools, literally Legacy Christian, right down the road, right? There's private healthcare providers, okay? All of those things, there's competition there too. And there's inequality of access, okay, because the government's not controlling it, like in a command economy, okay? There's freedom there of basically how much are you willing to pay for whatever type of quality, okay? So those are some downfalls. The big three questions here: what's going to be produced? Whatever the consumer wants, right? How is it going to be produced? An entrepreneur could be someone who creates a way to make whatever it is that they want to make, right? And who is it going to be produced? Whoever's going to buy it. So you have to have people who are going to buy your product if you're going to be successful in a capitalist economy, okay? All right, and the last one is a little bit tricky, okay? A mixed economy is really just a mix between government control and freedom, like freedoms by the consumers, okay? So kind of like capitalism and socialism mixed together. This is honestly really what the U.S. is, because our government has limits on the education. Our government controls the courts. Our government is the one who builds our roads, okay, and hospitals, and gives subsidies, so like helps out farmers and oil companies, okay? So our government honestly really kind of helps out the companies and the things in our economy. So we're honestly really more mixed, but we are also very, very capitalist compared to everyone else in the world. But just know that a mixed economy, there's some government control or some government intervention, where there is also a lot of freedoms in countries too, okay? So mixed is kind of like a blending of both of those. All right, and that's it for mixed, okay? The last slide, this has what we're going to do. So for about 15 minutes or so, I'm going to get you started on this. I have big sheets of paper over here, and we're going to make a foldable, and you're just going, it's going to be just like this. Behind each little flap is going to be one type of system. You're going to tell me all that stuff that's listed over there on the right-hand side, and you're going to color it, okay? So we're going to get started for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then I'll explain the map quiz. And when you're done with your map quiz, you can keep working on this, okay?